I sold $40 million worth of service in a 4-year period, and I didn't even get into sales until my 30s, and I learned 3 earth-shattering revelations that completely changed the game for me that I know will save you years of trial and error. My name is Sami, and I've helped build the sales teams for some of the biggest names out there, from Graziosi, Tony Robbins, Maxwell Finn, Ashton Hall, and dozens of other people in the B2B space, the fitness space, even SaaS companies, and everything in between. Over the years, the 3 lessons that I learned that really changed the game, not just for me myself, but also for the sales reps that I worked with, was number 1, objection handling is BS. And I'll tell you why. A lot of times when you get into sales, you just hear, what's the fanciest objection handling technique that you can learn? And I kind of fell for this when I got involved in sales because I thought I needed to grab every single book on objection handling. And so I did. And I got really well versed in that. So I was like, if they say this, I'm going to say that. I had like a tool belt. I had sticky notes. I had a notepad written down. I was very well versed in how do I make sure that whenever they say something, I got them. So what ends up happening if you're really good at objection handling, but not the actual sales call itself, is that you kind of get people in I got you moments. They may say something, you get them in I got you moment, and then they may just feel a bit weird and they almost feel pressured to buy it. And what happens is when that person buys, trust me, they're not feeling fantastic. They're feeling like, here's my credit card, let's do this. But then they're going to start letting the buyer's remorse settle in. That's when they go and say, what did I just do? An hour later, 2 hours later, even the next day, they may sleep on it and say, you know what? I don't want to do this. What ended up happening is, even though I was able to close more sales by being a better objection handler, the reality is the people who ended up buying from me ended up having come back to say, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Can I get a refund? Can I opt out? Rightfully so, because the call wasn't done correctly. And if I didn't do the call correctly, if I didn't actually treat them the way a sales call should have gone, they have every right to say, you know what, I don't want to do this. So it's not about getting really good about objection handling. It's about really getting good at the actual call itself. Which actually brings me to my second point. And the second point is what you say to the prospect doesn't really matter. And you may think this of, hey, what does that even mean? You have to say the right things to the prospect. And I want to preface this by saying a lot of people think that if they're just the best presenters, they'll be able to get a sale. So they just get really good at studying the offer, studying the case studies, and if I just present this really well, I'm going to do a great job. If that's the case, why don't we as a company get rid of every single sales rep out there and instead just record one great presentation and have all the FAQs there, have all the case studies on one page, send it out in a blast email to every single person who ever opted in, and then never need sales reps again. The reality is we need a salesperson there because they need to ask the right questions to figure out what is going on and what specifically does that person actually need. One of the best quotes my mentor in sales taught me was, people don't buy because they like what they hear, they buy because they feel heard. And if you really think about this, a lot of people, they show up to a sales call and they're just getting presented at. Here's why our offer is amazing. Here's why this is great. Here's how we can help you. All the great things about them. And they feel like they're drinking from a fire hose and they're, drowning in all this information, and confused people don't buy. Your sales reps don't need to become good at presentation mode. They need to be good at problem finding mode. The ability to jump on a call, ask the right questions, figure out what does this person even need? What are they looking for? What are their actual goals? What have they tried? And then do they even want help? Those are the questions that they should be asking and digging a little bit deeper. At each level, they need to be able to go a mile deep rather than an inch deep. And a lot of times what people do is they do the exact opposite. They go a mile wide and an inch deep, and they never get the information that they're trying to get to. So they just get surface level stuff, and then they present a surface level solution. Now, if you think about this, let's just say in the fitness space, even though 2 people may have the exact same path that they need to go down, hey, take a look at your calories, make sure you're working out correctly, and make sure you're getting rest. I would say in the fitness space, that's pretty much what everyone else is doing, what you should be doing in general. There's nothing revolutionary about this. However, the main thing that people don't realize, and the main thing that they actually miss, is that it needs to be customized, and the person needs to feel like it makes sense to them specifically. Because otherwise, every single person who gets on a call knows that the fitness offer is going to be calories, work out more, get some rest. That's all it's going to be. When a 20-year-old who wants to be, in shape for a bodybuilding competition shows up to a call, he's going to have very different goals than a middle-aged woman who's had 4 kids and she's just trying to lose weight to look like she did just before the calls, just before she had those kids. Back when she was in her 30s, maybe, or even her 20s. So those two people, even though they have the exact same path, they're going to have very different points. But they need to have similar questions so that you can uncover each of their paths. So that when you present the solution and you say, hey, remember when you said you wanted to be on stage for fitness? This is why we're going to work out in this method, because we're going to get you to build on muscle faster. It sounds specific to them and they feel like they've been heard. And that's the case because you actually sat down and asked them the right questions rather than just throwing them a cookie cutter solution. At the same rate, the person who says, hey, I want to look good and get in shape like I did before my kids, they're going to have a similar experience. They're going to need to feel like, hey, remember when you said you wanted to go back into shape the way you looked before kids? Well, that's exactly why we're going to do this, this, and that, whatever your solution actually is. It's funny because I was recently on a sales call myself where I was the prospect. And rather than finding out anything about my needs, about what I was looking for, about what the companies that I was working with needed, the person just went through a complete presentation and made a 10-minute presentation of why they're the best company, all the companies they've worked with, who they're trusted by. And while all this information is great and probably all true and factual, and let's be honest, could probably really help me, I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel like I was getting an understanding of what I needed. And so I was a little bit confused. And for that reason, I did not buy. And let's be real, now I'm looking for a different solution, and I probably won't go back to that solution because it confused me and because it didn't feel personal. If I felt heard, I was going to buy, but I didn't feel heard. I didn't like what I hear, and I walked away. The last one, and honestly, this is probably the biggest one by far, is that people buy the identity of the person they're trying to become. Now, this is the case for B2C sales or even B2B sales. So even if someone wants to build a company or their company is doing well, but they want to do a bit better, they're buying the identity of what that company will look like at a certain level and what that's going to make a difference for them. And so the game-changing moment for me here was they're looking for someone to just hold them accountable. They need that person to tell them, hey, doing this is going to solve your problems, and here's what you had just said. I'm going to hold you accountable to the words that you used earlier. Because let's be real, if they do nothing, they're just going to stay stuck and they're going to look at other solutions. And if you know your solution is better than other companies, you are doing them a disservice by letting them go think about it. You're also doing them a disservice by letting them go and explore 30, 40, 50 other companies that you and I both know aren't going to solve their problem. There's a fantastic book about this topic called The Challenger Sale by Matthew Dixon and Brent Adamson. And it's a really good book because it shows you the difference when everyone thinks they need to be super friendly on calls and everyone's trying to be buddies on these sales calls. They're jumping on, and I've reviewed some calls that for companies where I've seen them do 10 minutes of rapport building, where they're just trying to build this relationship. And the reality is that's fine, but that's actually costing you deals, and I'll prove it to you. Now, in this book, they found some pretty cool findings. The first one is that out of all the reps out there, that 40% of the reps that were the top performers were challenger reps, people who were actually holding people accountable, and only 7% were relationship building reps. The ones who are sitting there and trying to talk about sports, talk about the weather, talk about, all these different sports things that are going on at the same time. No one cares. They're here for a problem. They're here to get a solution. That's what we need to focus on for today's call. And the last stat that really blew my mind was that challenger reps, when it got down to like really difficult, more complex calls, were 370% more likely to close those sales than their peers. So if you really think about it, relationship building is actually costing you deals. The more you try to build a strong relationship, and even though, you're trying to create that good connection, I understand what you're doing, but it's costing you sales. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying be rude to clients. I'm not saying be rude to prospects at all. I'm saying speak to them, have a conversation at a normal tone, but then hold them accountable and also challenge them. Now, if you're watching this video and you're the owner of a company that has a sales team, or you're the manager of a sales team, I'm going to go ahead and give you my book for free. It's called Building a Pro Sales Team, the 11 rules that take your company from good money to great money. I've seen too many companies get stuck at the good money ceiling, and the good money ceiling is typically around $100,000 a month when you're doing okay, but you're not doing enough to be dangerous. And what I found is that there's a lot of things that companies could be doing a little bit different. Just some needle movers that if they did correctly, they'd be able to take their companies to the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and send this over to you. The book's free, just cover shipping. You can click down below and grab a copy yourself, or just go to samimeibar.com/book and I'll send you a copy today.